Hello, Alexis. We're going to take a look at your first two postings for the class here. And so we will screen share. Since you've seen us do this before, I will skip the introduction of what I'm doing and just jump right into that we're doing it, taking a look at your emphasis project for the completeness of it and so on. It all looks pretty good. You've got everything in order here. Looks thorough and fairly well organized. Now, we didn't really have any compositional strategies here other than just the idea that we're starting out very far and then slowly getting closer and closer together. The first being a concept of in the environment, which means an establishing shot. And then as we get closer, the reason we're cutting it in half has to do mostly with, excuse me, has to do mostly with this idea that we want to be very aware of the idea that we're getting closer, the viewer, that we're getting closer, so that it isn't just a subtle thing, the difference between one and the other. It's definitely, okay, I'm this far away, now I'm much closer here, so that there is a distinct difference between one and the other. And so definitely we have this idea that we're in the environment here. You made a choice to have a very broad element here with text right in the front. The image really becomes about this. It's a portrait of this rather than the environment. So we're looking at this. You have to understand when we do something like that, what we're asking the viewer to do. So anytime we make a choice like this visually, we want to make that choice with the idea in mind. What am I expecting the viewer to receive here? What is it that I want them to receive? In this case, you are wanting, I'm presuming, for us to receive the word Randolph's, right? And the fact that it's on this sort of tree and that we're going to look back toward that. So it's sort of almost like a title slide of some sort that you're presenting to us, understanding that. Now, this is backlit. It's not quite short lit. I see what you're doing to get the lighting right, and you're making the right choice as far as the tree, but the sign itself, if this is a sort of title slide to the series, which is kind of a cool idea, I would have liked to have seen a little bit of light hitting that sign, even if it wasn't hitting the letters, a little bit of light hitting the sign. That would have gone a long way to highlighting what you wanted us to see, which is the sign. Portrait of the structure. Here again, I think even though we had the technical parameter of being half as close, I think if we were just a little bit closer so that the building itself, the edges of it were running off. So you cropped it here, running off here, and it was cropped here. We get a much better sense of the focus of what you want us to see, because this business here is not really necessary. We don't really need to see that in order to understand what you want us to look at. The real activity, the real karma of what we're seeing is this staircase going up like that. And so this isn't really contributing to that. And then this diagonal here isn't really contributing to it either. So again, it's really about what do we want to emphasize, what is it that we want to see, and how can we use those elements in order to get there. Now you bring us a little bit more closer, you're clarifying what it is that we want us to see, right? So this is much better because you're starting to get a little bit more critical, you're becoming more economical in what you're showing us. This project does a lot to help me understand where your comfort zone is in some cases. Each image maker is going to have their range. Each image maker is going to have a sort of distance, a range distance, and sometimes it's not fluid. It's not from here to here. Sometimes it's here to here and then here to here, and there's a gap in between where it's kind of gets a little bit muddy. Here seems like you're good. At least in this composition, because you're using the lines in a very effective way. This is a hard composition to work with, Alexis, because you've got all these lines happening here, right? Everything is going all in different directions, yet somehow you've managed to get it all to line up. This line moving up, hitting through this tree. Wow, that's great. You got this diagonal that's happening down in this direction, which is countering this diagonal going in that direction. You've got yeah, everything just seems to be crisscrossing and hitting each other and countering each other in just the right way. It's really a great way to be working. And then it kind of doesn't work on this one. We don't quite have the same dynamic kind of workings going on here. And it really has to do just with a few tweaks and a few movements here. Here, what we have is this incredible sort of precision of what's going on, because we have so much movement, because we have so much business that's happening. You need that. Here you have still a lot of business, believe it or not. You have a lot of lines that are going on here. You have this line, you have these lines, you have this line, you have all of these lines. You even have these lines going on back in here. You got this, you got this. There's a lot of line work going on here. It could have used the same attention to structure as this one, and it would have had the same feel. It would have had that same sort of weight to it that the other was giving you. Now here we are, we're right in through, looking through a glass or something like that. We're right in through up on the element, and you know, you're working through with color. These different themes, you know, clearly they're drawn from the principles of design. They're not arbitrary though. I didn't just select them because I just randomly wanted you to do some principles of design. It's very helpful for you to be able to explore, but also helpful for me to understand where the class as a whole happens to be with these principles, so that I can understand just where we are as a group for understanding how to use color within a composition, or how to use shape within a composition, or line, or light, that kind of thing. And if as a group, I see that everyone's understanding of color seems to be pretty strong, but the use of line seems to need a lot of work, I'll know to put more emphasis on that, and maybe not have to emphasize as much on color. I'll address it, but maybe not as much as I do the one or the other. So all of these things are very multiple part. I think you know that by now, having a couple of classes with me now, that we are very thorough with the layering, even when it seems to be very straightforward. None of these elements here are meant to be by accident, by any means, by accident. So let's take a look at your rule of thirds and see how you do with that structure. Let's move up here, rule of thirds, Alexis. And we'll check out just how the rule of thirds came across. Now, this is interesting because, you know, when I introduced this and you were on the you were on Zoom, just how much of it translated and whether you were able to pick up on the subtleties and the nuances of the discussion and the lecture. You know, it concerns me a little bit sometimes when students are up there, because I want to be sure that you get the same information and the same kind of animated kind of emphasis that I try to put into those kinds of lectures and discussions. So I want to make sure that you guys are, when you are in those remote settings, that you're still getting the information as well as possible. So here you've got the composition, you've got the line work happening, and this is positioned pretty well where it needs to be vertically. And then you have the horizon line. It's a little bit high, but in general, you got the weight of the horizon line. At least it's not in the center, which is an excellent way to start us off. You know, we have this a little bit over here. If it was a little lower, it'd be better, but good job of not having the sun itself in the image. We're gonna have a little bit of a discussion in class about that, about sun in photographs. I've seen more than a lot of it for some reason this semester in the first few projects here. So it's one of those things we want to avoid, having the sun directly in an image. So that said, you've done this is an excellent job in positioning this and in keeping it from looking over the top, like right on the nose rule of thirds. This is a little more centrally located than we would want to be for a rule of thirds horizon line. Not that this is a bad image at all. You wouldn't want to change too much about this image. Just as we were talking about it in relationship to the rule of thirds, it is something that we would want to change. Here it's addressed in another way. Man, I mean, this is like a very quintessential, almost stock sort of nature photograph, right? You can tell now how this sort of happens. Stock photographers, they make a living on making thousands of images, tens of thousands of images. Stock photographers make tens of thousands of images in the hopes that they will sell 1 or 2 or 4 of them. And make, you know, a couple of $1,000s on each of them. They make image after image after image after image. They don't have time to pour over the composition of absolutely everything. Plus, their compositions need to fit into a lot of different things. So they use these kinds of structures like the rule of thirds so that they know that designers will go, ooh, look, that's beautifully composed using the rule of thirds, which I'm, the graphic designer would be eager to use. So therefore they might choose that structure more specifically than someone who might be using some other kind of structure. So here again, you're positioning in the vertical fairly well. Here, this is a little bit more centrally located. This is always seems to be, and I'm going to continue to refine how I present the rule of thirds, and particularly that horizon line. It's maybe just what students have to go through the first round of making images where you will still put the horizon line in the middle of the compositions, even when we're saying don't put it in the middle. You find yourself doing it. It's almost like like a magnet, and you get drawn. That horizon has to be in the middle. And so you can see all of the horizon emphasis is right in the middle of the image, rather than emphasize at the top or emphasize in the bottom, either up, you know, a rising balance or a lower balance. You got the vertical position just right though. So again, right in the middle. And you're not the only one. I'm not criticizing. I think this is an excellent image, but we're talking about rule of thirds. We wouldn't want it to be there. This is a really cool observational shot. I think when you start to shoot through things and work compositions in this way, that you can kind of get into some really cool spots. I'm not sure that we can find formally, if I were to be showing examples of rule of thirds, that this would be a good one to use. I don't see anything particularly wrong with it. I mean, I don't think it's not using the rule of thirds. I can kind of see where it's kind of falling into place, but is it really a great example? Probably not so much. This is a lot of midday stuff that you're making images of, and I'm wondering if that just has to do with the time of day you have available, or if it happens to be your favorite time of day to make photographs. Use all of the things that we addressed last semester with the lighting class, especially what we did on location there. We explored all kinds of different types of lighting. And so even if it's not a consideration of time-wise, and this is the only time you have available, I really encourage you to explore all kinds of different times of day. Really kind of a cool image here. That's neat. Only in Colorado you get that kind of stuff. You see here, now we have a little bit more of a variety of the composition. We're getting better with this horizon. This is a bit up a bit higher. There we're starting to get there. It's funny because what happens is you were looking at the vertical on one of them and then you forgot about the horizon here. And then what happens is you start getting the horizontal horizon and then the vertical start drifting more toward the center. It's almost like your eye wants to put something in the middle of a photograph. It's just like this strange like magnetism to say, put something in the middle, put something in the middle. You don't have to. You really don't have to. In fact, the more you can break that, probably the more dynamic your composition will start to become. That one's much better. That one's much better. Whoop, whoop, whoop. What's happening? That happens every once in a while where I get on the scroll. It's unfortunate these guys are here. This is really disrupting what would otherwise be a pretty well-balanced image. Wires, man. That is, I don't know why we just didn't continue to bury all of our power lines. Well, I do know why. It's economy. It's because burying them is much more expensive than hanging them over our heads. But boy, it would have been much more aesthetically beautiful country if we never had hung wires everywhere just up over our heads like that. I think you know the general sort of pattern here. So we talk about your imagery, and I will work up the grade form and that kind of thing. I think you're on the right track with a lot of this stuff. I would encourage you to work with your camera controls. On the handouts, you're going to see where I am making suggestions for those who know your cameras fairly well. Those are written specifically for people like you who have taken my lighting course, who know their cameras a bit more, who have some experience at various times of day, not nighttime. I still don't want you guys to photograph at night for this class. But definitely when you see those notations where I'm talking about long shutter speeds or using apertures and stuff like that, that's going to be primarily addressed to you. Gabe's in the class, and so you'll see that's addressed to people like you and he and others who have taken the lighting class already. So that's what I have for you. I look forward to seeing more of your imagery, and we will see you in class. All right, bye-bye now.